Hello, am I audible? Okay. Okay, let's just start the session. Anybody who joins can join in between, I guess. Okay, so this is the tutorial for the third week of Animal Physiology, a course offered by Professor Mainak Das. I am Geetika Agarwal. I'm a PhD scholar in Center for Ecological Sciences in ISC Bangalore, and I'll be conducting today's session. So, anybody, if you have any doubts, you can ask me either in between or at the end of my presentation. My presentation is going to summarize whatever was covered during the week, and then we'll have a small Q&A session. Okay, so moving on to what were the topics that were covered in week three. Professor Das discussed types of muscle tissues that are there in our body, formation of the skeletal muscle, organization of the skeletal muscle, actin and myosin filaments, and the sliding filament theory. So we'll discuss all of these in a little detail and so that you get an idea of what was happening during the week, and then we can have a discussion over these. Okay, so first of all, let's come to the skeletal um classification. So here are these two forms of the skeleton. One of them is along the midline of the body, and one of them is in the limbs and appendages. So this is a classification based on the position of the bones in our body. So can you tell me what are these two skeleton types? What are they called? The one that is along the midline of the body and the one that is in the limbs. What are these two types of skeleton called? You can either unmute yourself and tell me the answer, or you can type it out in the chat box. So, what do these highlighted regions? Uh, what are they classified as? Anyone? Anybody would like to take a guess? Okay, if nobody wants to take a guess to this, so the one that is along the midline is called the axial skeleton, which is along the midline of our body, and the skeleton or the bones and the muscles that are found in the limbs, in the appendages, are called the appendicular skeleton. Okay, so these are the two broad categories based on the location where these bones and muscles are found. Moving on to these three different muscle types that are broadly discussed mostly in when discussing the muscle system. So, can you guys tell me by looking at these images what are these three different types of muscles that are found in our body? Can you identify A, B, and C? Skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Correct, you're correct. The first one is the skeletal muscle, this one here. As you can see these striations very clearly, and you can see that it's a multinucleated muscle tissue. Second one is the cardiac muscle, and the last one, which is smooth without any striations, is the smooth muscle. Okay. So as we discussed, there are these three types of muscles: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscles. So based on the force generation, can you tell me which one of these has the highest amount of force generation and which one has the least amount of force generation? Anyone would like to take a guess which one of these three muscle types has the highest amount of force generation and which one produces the lowest amount of force? Skeletal muscle. Correct. The skeletal muscle has the highest amount of force generation because, as we can see, we can even lift heavy weights when we are using our skeletal muscles, these voluntary muscles. But when it comes to the smooth muscles, we hardly feel any force that is generated by them, even though they are at work constantly. And in the cardiac muscle, they form somewhere in between because you can actually hear your heart beating. You can hear that lumped up sound either when you put on a stethoscope or just by keeping a hand on your chest. You can hear your heart beating. So the skeletal muscles produce the highest amount of force. Cardiac muscles fall somewhere in between, producing a medium amount of force, and the smooth muscles produce the least amount of force because they are just involved in peristalsis of food and waste through our body. Okay, so let's discuss these muscles in a little more detail. So, can you guys tell me some of the features of these skeletal muscles? So, we've just talked about a lot of these details already in the previous two slides. So, can you give me a few points that you would use to identify a skeletal muscle? Anyone, you can either unmute yourself and guess, or you can just type it out in the chat box. Aruna is saying multinucleate. Correct. The skeletal muscle cells are often multinucleate. What else? They are voluntary. Yes, they are controlled. We can control the movement of the skeletal muscles. Striated. Yes. They usually attach to the skeleton. Correct. They attach the bones to our skin. And any guesses about the function of the skeletal muscles? What function do they play in our body? Anyone? Some very normal functions of the skeletal muscle that you can guess. Okay. So, to discuss a few points, as you all said, you were correct. So they do attach to the bones to the skin. These muscles, they are voluntary muscles, as Aruna said. We can control their motion. They are multinucleated. They play important functions like they help us maintain our posture. They help us in movement. We can move our arms and legs. They help stabilize these joints because they form a covering around the joints, and they help stabilize them and allow their motion, and they maintain body temperature. When we shiver, we can maintain our body temperature. When we can produce heat when it's too cold outside. So these are a few functions that the skeletal muscles play. They are controlled by motor signals from the brain. As we said, they are voluntary, and mostly the somatic nervous system is the one that controls the movements of the skeletal muscle. So moving on to the cardiac muscle, just like the skeletal muscle, can you guys take a few guesses on how you would identify the cardiac muscle and what roles does it play in our body? Why do you think we need the cardiac muscle, and how would you identify if you were given, say, a section of the cardiac muscle under a microscope? How would you identify that? It's present in the heart, correct? That's the first way to know where is it located. It's located in the heart, so it's the cardiac muscle. What else? So there are these intercalated discs that can be seen, correct? So these are the, here you can see we have these intercalated discs that can be seen in the cardiac muscles. What else? Other things. This is very simple. How would you identify a cardiac muscle? There are some very basic things. Okay, so let's just discuss these few things about the cardiac muscle. First of all, as said, they are present in the heart. So they're present in the heart walls, correct? These are involuntary muscles. As we know, we don't have to think that our heart should beat. Our heart just keeps beating. So it's an involuntary muscle. We do not control it. And they are striated. As we can see, there are these striations in the skeletal muscles as well, in the cardiac muscles as well. And they're responsible for the regular beating of the heart, and they're responsible for the propulsion of blood in the blood vessels, because it's the heart that beats is what controls the movement of blood in our blood vessels. And then they're controlled by the autonomic nervous system, means that they are involuntary, they're not controlled by the somatic nervous system. Coming on to the smooth muscles, which is the last category, based on these striations or based on their locations. So, how can we identify a smooth muscle, and what does it mostly do? It's involuntary, correct? So, if it's involuntary, it's controlled by the somatic or the autonomic nervous system, also called visceral, correct? Where are they mostly present? In the visceral organs, correct. So moving on, so the smooth muscles, they're found in the walls of the alimentary canal, in our urinary bladders, in the uterus, in the blood vessels, in all of these things that we don't really feel when movement is happening in these organs. They are involuntary, as Aruna said. They are non-striated, which means that we do not see these striations that we see in the cardiac or in the skeletal muscles, and they are uninucleated cells, and they help us in the peristalsis of food, in the movement in the bolus of food from our mouth to, say, our stomach and so on. And they help in getting rid of the waste from the body when they are present in the excretory system, and they are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So these are a few basic characteristics of these three different muscle types that you could keep in brain, just as to remember what these different muscle types play a role in. Okay. So moving on to the formation of the skeletal muscles, which is also called myogenesis. Myo meaning muscles and genesis meaning formation. So when we talk about the formation, so here we're going to discuss the formation of the skeletal muscles. So can you guys tell me the steps that are involved in the formation of the skeletal muscle? What are the few steps? I have outlined them in this slide. So can you guys tell me what are the few steps that are important for the formation of the skeletal muscle? What's the first step? What should happen? Anyone? How is the skeletal muscle formed? What are the few things that happen during the formation of a skeletal muscle? Anybody would like to guess or would like to answer this? How does the formation of skeletal muscle happen? Actin, myosin filaments, okay. But like I'm talking about how does it start from say an embryo, which is like a mass of cells, what happens to these cells and how do they form the skeletal muscle? Actin, myosin filaments is like in the organization, they are the basic units. But what happens to an embryo, which is a mass of cells? What happened to these cells? How do they become the skeletal muscle of our body? Myocyte, myotube. Okay, so here are the few steps that happen for the formation of the skeletal muscle. First of all, we have these progenitor cells that are present, say, in the mass of cells that is the embryo, and these migrate to specific sites where they would form the skeletal muscle. At these specific sites, cell division takes place, and this is what leads to the formation of these myocytes that you're mentioning. So at these specific sites, the cell division takes place, and further these cells align in straight lines in these rows. After getting aligned, there is still a little bit of cell division that is happening, but eventually it stops, and these cells that touch each other at the boundaries, that share boundaries, these boundaries get fused and they form long tubes, which are called myocytes. And they are multinucleated because multiple cells that are present in a row, they fuse together and form one myotube. So these are multinucleated tubes, and multiple of these myotubes, they coil around each other and then they form myofibrils. So this is what I was looking for in the answer to this question of how does the formation of skeletal muscles happen. So here is a small sketch that I've made to explain these various steps that happen in the formation of a skeletal muscle. So this is like an embryo, which is the mass of cells, and here in this red circle are these progenitor cells, which are also called myoblasts, that are destined to form these skeletal muscles. They then move or they migrate to these specific sites where they are supposed to make the skeletal muscle, and then they start dividing there. In these specific sites, this is how they start dividing. So say this is the specific site S3, this is where these cells, they start dividing into multiple cells. So myocytes division is happening in this phase, and then as I said, the cells align themselves in these straight lines into these rows. After aligning, there is still a little bit more of division that is happening, but then this division ceases, and then in these cells in the rows, they fuse together to form these multinucleated tubes that are called myotubes. So here the cells fuse, and then finally these myotubes coil around each other, and then they form myofibrils. So this is just the way you have to remember them. First, the progenitor cells, they migrate. After migration, they start dividing. After dividing, they align. After aligning, they then fuse together and then they form myotubes. And these tubes, they coil and then they form myofibrils. Okay, so this is the formation of the skeletal muscle. Now let's talk about the organization of the skeletal muscle tissue. So can you tell me how is the skeletal muscle organized? What are the smallest units and how they assemble together to form the muscle? So what are these units that come together and then they lead to the formation of the muscle? Anyone? How is this skeletal muscle organized? Myofibril, okay. Okay, fine. So basically, what happens is we have these thick and thin filaments. As Aruna mentioned earlier, we have these actin and myosin filaments, which are the thick and thin filaments. And when all of these come together, so this is like the summation symbol. When these come together, they form the myofibrils. As Kamlesh said, these myofibrils when they come together, they all form the muscle fibers. And these different muscle fibers, when they bunch up, they form a bundle. And then this is what forms the final muscle. So here is a structure of the skeletal muscle. As you're mentioning, epimysium, perimysium, endomysium, these are the different parts that are found. So can you guys help me in labeling these diagrams? I will point my cursor and you just have to tell me uh, what is that thing, what will you label it as? So here, what is this outer covering here of the muscle? What is this called? Epimysium, correct. Then what are these two blue and red dots that we see here? What are these two that are running along in the muscle? Fascicles, okay. These red and blue ones, what are they? Fascicle is this one, the one which is like the bundle of blood vessels, correct. So these red and blue ones are basically the arteries and the veins that run along in the muscles. This here is the fascicle, which is composed of different muscle fibers. And this space that is present between these different fascicles, what is that called? The space that is present between the different muscle fascicles. Perimysium, okay. And here is the bundle. These fascicles are a bundle of muscle fibers. So these are the different muscle fibers that are found inside. So here, between the muscle fibers, okay, so what are these cells here that are present on the outside of a muscle fiber? What are these cells called? And why are they important? These cells here, or you can say, what is this cell here? What is this? These are myofibrils, correct. The ones here are myofibrils. But what is this cell that is found outside, or like that is attached to the muscle fiber on the outside? This cell here that is attached to the muscle, satellite cells, correct. Satellite cells. So what role do satellite cells play? Why are they important? Repair. They help in the repair of muscle fibers. How do they help in the repair of muscle fibers? What is that characteristic about them that helps them in repairing of the muscles? So these satellite cells, basically they are the stem cells. They have the property of differentiating into and forming the muscle cells. So stem cell is the term that I was looking for. The satellite cells are basically stem cells, and they have the capacity of then differentiating into forming these muscles. Okay, so here this is one muscle fiber. So inside these we have these myofibrils, as we know. And what are these structures here? These small structures, apart from the myofibrils that we see in this uh, fiber, mitochondria. Correct. And what is this covering of the muscle fiber? What is this covering called? Endomysium. Okay. Okay, let's move on. And now I will give you these labelings. So here, basically, we have the epimysium, as you said, which is covering the muscle. Blood vessels, we discussed. Fascicle, we discussed. Satellite cells, yes. And then these inside a muscle fiber is a myofibril. This is the sarcolemma. The covering of one muscle fiber is the sarcolemma. And endomysium um, is the space that is present between these different muscle fibers. Okay, and perimysium is the place is the space that is present between these different muscle fascicles. Okay, so this is basically the structure or the organization of the skeletal muscle. Moving on to structure of one myofibril. So when we look at one single myofibril, we have these thick and thin filaments that are present. So can you guys tell me which one is the thick filament and which one is the thin filament? The thin filament is the actin, and the thick filament would then be. So correct. So here we have actin, which is you can see here attached to the side by the Z line. It's the actin, and the thick ones are the myosin filaments, and they come together and they form this structure which is called the sarcomere, and different sarcomeres together form an entire myofibril. And when we talk about the thick myosin filament, it has this tail and these two myosin heads, and this entire structure is made up of two heavy neromyosin chains and four light myosin chains. Guess, Faizan, do you have any? Do you have something to say? Okay, so let's move on. So basically, these each myosin head is made up of one heavy meromyosin chain and two light meromyosin chains. So the two of them are made up of two heavy chains and four light chains. Okay. And in these actin filaments, you can see that there is this F actin, which is coiled together with the tropomyosin to form the chain structure. And then there is this troponin molecule, which is present, and it binds to the actin by the I site. Troponin I binds the troponin to the actin. C binding site binds it to calcium ions, and the T site binds it to the tropomyosin. So these are a few things to keep in mind. Troponin T is the site that binds troponin to the tropomyosin. Troponin I binds it to the actin, and troponin C binds it to the calcium ions. So this is how the two structures look like: the thick bands, which are the myosin, and the thin bands, which are the actin filaments. Okay, and these are what are responsible for striations. So can you guys tell me which are the parts where we see dark bands and which ones are the ones where we see light bands? What is responsible for these striations? F-actin, basically, so in actin, there are these two types of actin. F-actin molecules are the ones that actually coil around with tropomyosin to form this actin filament, and G-actins are the active sites that Professor Das was mentioning in his lectures. These active sites are actually made up of the molecule which is called G-actin, and the F-actin molecules form the uh, from the coiled structure with tropomyosin. Is that okay? So basically, in actin, there are two types of actin. One is G actin, one is F actin. G actin form the active sites, which later on will actually interact with the myosin heads for the movement of the muscle. And the F actin is the one that coils around with tropomyosin. Is that clear? Okay. So moving on to striations, I was asking you guys, how do we see the light and the dark bands? Where do we see the light bands and where do we see the dark bands? Anybody who would like to take a guess? It's pretty simple. A band, thick band. Okay. And no, my question is, where do you basically see the dark bands and where do you see the light bands? It's intuitively very simple. So anybody would like to take a guess? Okay, so basically, wherever the actin and the myosin filaments they overlap, that is where obviously less light will penetrate through those areas where multiple of these are overlapping together, and that is why we see the darker bands under the microscope, because less light can pass through them. But in the zones where there is low overlap, where there is only myosin or only actin filaments, that are the zones where we see light bands. when we visualize them under a microscope. Okay, so just to remember, dark bands are where these actin myosin overlap, light bands where there is no overlap between these two filaments. So moving on to different zones in a sarcomere. So can you guys tell me what are these different zones? What is the A band? What is the H band? What is the M line? What is the Z line? What are these different zones? What is the I band? So basically, what is the H band? You can actually take a look in the diagram also. That will give you a clue. What is the H band? Anyone? Okay, what is the M line? Anybody would like to take a guess of these things? You can even see that in the diagram. It is there in front of you. You just have to think a bit and tell me what is the H band, what is the A band, what are these different categorizations. Correct. M line is basically the line or the protein which is at the center of the sarcomere to which the myosin attaches. That is correct. You can see that in the diagram as well. M line is the central line to which these different myosin filaments they attach. Similarly, what is the Z disc or the Z line? The neighboring lines that define a sarcomere, H line, where only myosin is present and there is no overlapping actin, correct? And then what is the A band? And what is the I band? Where myosin and actin overlap. Are you sure? Because here you can see that A band is from here to here, but in the middle region there is no overlap of actin and myosin. So basically, A band is the region where there is myosin, and it does not matter whether or not it overlaps with the actin in those areas. So basically, as you said, H band is the area that contains myosin and only myosin. There is no overlap with actin in this zone. But A band, it contains all of myosin and there is overlap with actin as well. That is included within the A band. I band is the one that contains only actin and there is no overlap with myosin in this area. M line, as you said, is the supporting protein in the center that hold these myosin filaments together, and the Z discs that are the ones that separate one sarcomere from the next. And to the Z discs, basically, these different filaments are attached, the actins are attached, and the myosins are attached with the help of that titin molecule. You would have seen that in the previous. Here you can see there is this titin molecule that attaches the myosin to the Z lines. Okay, so these are the different zones basically in a sarcomere. And you can see here in the diagram, when a muscle contracts, nothing happens to the length of the A band, but it is the H band that gets that decreases in length because the actins move closer. So the A band would still remain the same because it is all that is covered by the myosin. Does not matter whether it's overlapped or not, but the area that does not have any overlap with actin, that is what gets decreased in length when a muscle basically contracts. Okay, so moving on to the four levels of tissue classification. So till now we've talked about how muscles are classified, and there are four ways in which we classify them. Number one is based on their appearance. Number two is based on how much force they generate, then where they are located in the body, and fourth is how electrically excitable are they. So can you guys tell me what are the different ways in which we classify muscles based on these four categories? How are muscles classified based on their appearance? What are the categories in which we classify muscles based on their appearance? Branched or not? Okay. Can you think of a more um, striations? Correct. So basically, there is striated or non-striated muscles. Then, based on the force generation, what are the three different categories in which we can classify muscles based on how much force they generate? We just discussed that in the previous slides. So, based on force, the amount of force that they generate, muscles are classified as. Anyone would like to take a guess? So basically, based on the amount of force that they generate, muscles can be classified as either skeletal if they generate high amount of forces. They can be cardiac if they generate a medium amount of force, and they can be smooth because they generate low force. So that is the force generation categorization that we looked at. Location in the body, you can see the muscles can either be appendicular or they can be axial based on where they are located in your body. And electrical excitability means that your muscles can either be electrically excitable, that is, they respond to nerve impulses, or they can be electrically non excitable. Okay, so these are the four levels of tissue classification, or of muscle tissue classification, to be more accurate here. Okay, so coming on to the last concept we're going to be covering in these slides is the sliding filament theory. Can you guys tell me what is the sliding filament theory? What does it say? This was discussed in the lecture during this week. So if you have taken a look at the lectures, you would know what is the sliding filament theory and what does it talk about. Actin slides over myosin. Okay. So you're actually reversed it. Basically, it's the sliding filament theory. It talks about the controlled movement of the thick myosin filaments on the rails of the thin actin filaments. How muscles contract and expand exactly. So they basically also mention how muscles contract and when they are in relaxed form. How does that happen? They're basically trying to answer that with the sliding filament theory. It mentions the controlled movement of the thick myosin filaments on the rails of the thin actin filaments, and it is also talks about the generation of the power stroke. So here you can see, as I talked before, this is the how actin looks like. It has the actin filament, tropomyosin and troponin, and the active sites, they're basically, here you can see they are marked in yellow. They are hidden by the tropomyosin. So at rest, there is no interaction between the actin and the myosin filaments. Both these filaments do not interact with each other. But the tropomyosin, it hides the active site of the actin. So the tropomyosin also keeps the active site hidden, which is basically the G actin as we discussed before. The active site stays hidden when there is no interaction, when the muscle is at rest. But when calcium ion is introduced into the milieu, when there is the presence of calcium ion, the troponin C binding site, which interacts with calcium, it binds with calcium, and this leads to the physical movement of troponin and tropomyosin complex, which now gets displaced and reveals the active sites, which are these myosin binding sites. When these sites get revealed, these sites then bind to the head of the myosin, and they lead to the movement of these myosin heads. And this is an energy intensive process. That is why it's called the power stroke. And because the myosin heads are being moved because of the actin filament, so that is why we talk about the movement of the thick myosin filaments on the rails of the thin actin filaments. So here is a video that shows how this movement happens, just to get an idea of how this movement happens. So when these calcium ions come, they make these active sites, they reveal these active sites, and then the myosin heads get attached and they are moved because of the attachment to the active sites. Okay, so this is basically what the sliding filament theory talks about. So this is all for the summarizing this week. These were all the concepts that were covered in the week, and now we're going to move on to the question answer session. If you guys have any doubts before that, we can discuss them now. If there are no doubts, then let's move on to the question answer session. Anyone has any doubts? Okay, let's move on to the question answer session. So the first question is, which of the following is not a component of skeletal muscle force dynamics? Which of the following is not a component of the force dynamics in skeletal muscles? Calcium ions, actin myosin, troponin, tropomyosin, or nodes of Ranvier? Fourth one, correct. Basically, nodes of Ranvier are not a part of these skeletal muscle force dynamics. Can you tell me where these nodes of Ranvier are actually found in our body? In the neurons. Correct. So you're absolutely correct. So the correct answer to this is the nodes of Ranvier, because they're not even found in the muscles. Moving on to the next one, actin myosin are what kind of compounds or molecules? What are actin and myosin? Are they carbohydrates? Are they proteins? Are they fats? What are they? B, proteins. Correct. So actin and myosin form in the category of proteins. In the skeletal muscle, which of the following prevents interaction between actin and myosin? Which of the following does not let actin and myosin interact? Is it the myotube? Is it the actin itself? Is it the tropomyosin, or is it the troponin? Which of the following prevents the interaction between actin and myosin? Correct. It's the third one. It's the option C. Basically, tropomyosin. Why? Because it covers the active sites that are actually responsible for the interaction between the actin and myosin filaments. So, tropomyosin is the answer to this question. Moving on, arteries are made up of which type of a muscle? Smooth muscle, skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, or all of them? Smooth muscles, correct. So arteries, as we said, because there is an involuntary movement of blood through these blood vessels, so these blood vessels are actually made up of smooth muscles. Moving on to satellite cells are dash that dash. What are satellite cells and what do they do? Are they stem cells or are they fully differentiated cells? Are they derived from myocytes or do they differentiate to form myocytes? So, how would you describe satellite cells? Okay, Faizan says it's three. They are fully differentiated and they differentiate to myocytes. Okay. Kamlesh says it's number one. Anyone else would like to take a guess on this question? It's actually an important question. Satellite cells are what type of cells and what do they do? 4. Okay. So the correct answer to this is actually number 1 that Kamlesh said. As I mentioned, satellite cells are basically these stem cells that are present near or in the vicinity of these muscle fibers, and when required for repair, they then differentiate to form the myocytes. Okay, so keep that in mind. Satellite cells are actually the stem cells, and then later on, they differentiate to form myocytes when the muscle repair is required. Okay, moving on to the next question. Which one of these is a non striated muscle? Skeletal, cardiac, smooth, rough. Are you sure, Aruna? Is it the rough muscle? Is rough even a muscle? Is that even a categorization? Number three, correct. So the correct answer to this is basically the smooth muscle, because as we said, the smooth muscle is not striated, it's smooth. And the rough muscle is not even a categorization of the muscle types in our body. Moving on to how would you describe the length of a sarcomere? The length of a sarcomere is dash. Number 4, correct. The length of the sarcomere is basically the distance between two Z lines. As we said, the two Z lines are the ones that are found at the edges or at the ends of a sarcomere. So they are the ones that they define the length of the sarcomere. So the sarcomere length, what happens to the sarcomere length when the actin and myosin overlap? Is unchanged. Okay. Anyone else? It decreases. Okay. Decreases. Okay. So the correct answer to this is actually that the sarcomere length decreases. So is that clear, Aruna, or do you have a doubt about this? Because when you talk about the sarcomere, it contains all of the different zones. And as I said, when the myosin and the actin, when they overlap, they start overlapping, the sarcomere length will actually decrease. The length between the two Z lines will start decreasing. What remains unchanged is actually the length of the A band, but the sarcomere length in total will start decreasing. Okay. So next question: which of these has no actin? Which of these zones does not have any actin? C. Correct. So basically, the H zone is the zone that just contains myosin filaments with no overlap of the actin filaments. So the H zone. Thank you. This was all the questions that I had for today. This is a website. Basically, you can refer to it for learning more about muscles, and you can find some very interesting. I basically find a lot of these interesting uh, cartoons or diagrams from this website. Anybody has any questions, we can discuss them. And if you guys are all clear, you can exit the meeting. We are done for the day. People who have doubt can ask me, either type it out in the chat box or you can just unmute yourself. If you have no doubts, you can leave the meeting. Thank you for joining. Okay, thank you everyone.